Let's talk about the mutual consuming of yin and yang as part of our continuing discussion on the four principles of yin and yang. Yin and yang are in a constant state of change so that when one increases, the other is consumed to preserve the balance. This can be easily seen in the ebb and flow of night and day. As the day comes to an end, yang decreases and yin increases. Exactly the same can be observed in the cycle of seasons. When spring comes, yin begins to decrease and yang increases. Beyond the mere preservation of their balance, yin and yang are also mutually consume each other. So when one increases, the other must decrease. For example, if the weather becomes unduly hot, which is yang, the water which is yin in the soil dries up. Thus, if yin is consumed, yang increases. If yang is consumed, yin increases. If yin increases, yang is consumed. And if yang increases, yin is consumed. In the human body, the mutual consuming of yin and yang can be seen from a physiological point of view and from a pathological point of view. From a physiological point of view, the mutual consuming of yin and yang is a normal process which keeps the balance of physiological functions. This process can be observed in all physiological processes. For example, in the regulation of sweating, urination, temperature of the body, breathing, and others. In summertime, for instance, the weather is hot, which is yang, and we sweat more, which is yin. When the external temperature is very cold, which is yin, the body starts trembling, which is yang, in an attempt to produce some heat. From a physiological point of view, the mutual consuming of yin and yang can also be observed in the alternation of yin and yang in the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle can be divided into 4 phases as follows. Phase 1, which is the bleeding phase. Phase 2, which is the post-menstrual phase, which is roughly a week after the end of bleeding. Phase 3, mid-cycle, or roughly a week around ovulation. In phase 4, the premenstrual phase, which is roughly a week before the period. In phases 1 and 2, yang is decreasing and yin is increasing. That is, yin increases and yang is consumed. In phases 3 and 4, yang is increasing and yin is decreasing. That is, yang increases and yin is consumed. From a Western perspective, the first 2 phases correspond to the follicular phase, and the last 2 phases to the luteal phase. Here is an illustration showing the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle, where as yang decreases in the phases 1 and 2, yin increases, and as yang increases in phases 3 and 4, yin starts to decrease. From a pathological point of view, yin or yang may increase beyond their normal range and lead to consumption of their opposite quality. For example, the temperature may rise, which is an excess of yang, during an infectious disease. This can lead to dryness and exhaustion of body fluids, which is a consumption of yin. Although some might still regard this as an attempt by the body to keep the balance between yin and yang, the body fluids and the temperature. It is not a normal balance, but a pathological balance deriving from an excess of yang. One might go further and say that the temperature itself was an attempt by the body to fight a pathogenic factor, but this does not change the fact that a rise in temperature represents an excess of yang, which leads to consumption of yin. From a pathological point of view, there can be 4 different situations of excess of yin or excess of yang leading to consumption of yin or yang, respectively, or consumption of yang or consumption of yin, leading to apparent excess of yin or yang, respectively. It is important to note that excess of yang and consumption of yin are not the same. In excess of yang, the primary factor is the abnormal increase of yang, which leads to consumption of yin. In consumption of yin, the primary factor is the deficiency of yin arising spontaneously and leading to an apparent excess of yang. Thank you for listening.